Hi everyone! Apparently Morg is still around, and yes, he's still spewing stupid. His whole thing is he claims that math proves all kinds of superstitious mumbo-jumbo, and, well, his suckers blindly accept it because we don't understand the math, so it must be true. Of course, these are the same idiots who would say that anything that is accepted by mainstream science must be a lie because we don't understand it, so it must be a lie. It's the simple idiots will blindly trust and throw money at anyone who says things they want to believe.
Have you ever wondered if you had a past life?
No, not really.
What if I told you there was a secret mathematical code embedded within your very soul that carries the memories and experiences of every single one of your past lives?
Then I would say you're wrong, because there's no such thing as a soul. Everything that ignorant people have historically attributed to the soul, because they didn't know any better, has turned out to be a function of the brain. The soul is just ancient superstition. It has some value as a metaphor, but that's it.
We're going to discover that mathematical code right now.
Yeah, why do I suspect that this is going to be stupid?
When it comes to reincarnation, the big question is, why don't we remember our past lives?
Because even if souls existed and could skip from a dead body to a newly conceived one or a newly born one, I don't know when you think the soul enters the body. It doesn't matter. Even if a soul existed, memory is a function of the brain. Brains don't skip from one body to another.
Take a minute to realize that nothing ever ends. Everything in the universe, it continues. Wood burns and transforms into ashes and heat. Water flows down a river and always goes somewhere. Even if it boils, it turns into steam.
Once the wood is burnt out, the process of wood burning terminates. Once the specific drop of water has run down the hill, the process of the drop of water going down the hill terminates. Once all the water has become vapor, the process of water boiling terminates. The fact that the matter involved in those processes still exists and that the energy involved may very well be eternal does not imply that the processes don't end. I'll beat you to it. Life and consciousness are both processes. They end.
What is the soul? What is the self exactly? And is it really true that karma is what influences who or what you're going to be in another life? Or is it something else? So to answer that question, we need to turn to secret knowledge.
Ah, yes, of course. Trust what the guru says because he has access to secret knowledge. The exact mindset you want your suckers to have, so that they believe everything you say without question.
But what if it was another kind of process altogether? And what if we could study this process and unlock its secrets scientifically, mathematically?
If we could, there would be no need for that secret knowledge you just said we had to turn to, now would there?
One of the earliest proponents of reincarnation in the West was none other than Pythagoras. Now, you probably remember learning the Pythagorean theorem in school, but did you know that Pythagoras said he could remember his past lives?
No. I'm aware that he believed in reincarnation and that there are non-contemporary sources reporting that he claimed to remember his past lives.
Pythagoras taught that everything is mathematical, a kind of matrix reality. Pythagoras said all is number, and number rules the universe. Now, do you see what's happening here? Now we're stepping into the realm where we can begin to discover a secret science. See, if reincarnation is real and everything is mathematical, that means reincarnation itself is a mathematical process.
Reincarnation is real, everything real is mathematical, therefore reincarnation is mathematical. Yeah. That would be a logically valid argument.
Golf clap? Golf clap.
Too bad neither premise is provably true, so the argument is unsound.
Now, the truth is that Pythagoras was right. It's not just some ancient belief. This is a mathematical reality, and modern physics backs this up. The physicist Werner Heisenberg said, "Modern physics takes a definite stand for Plato and the Pythagoreans. The smallest units of matter are not objects in the ordinary sense. They are forms, ideas, which can be expressed unambiguously only in mathematical language." The physicist Max Tegmark said, "Our physical world is a mathematical structure. This means that our physical world not only is described by mathematics, but that it is mathematical, a mathematical structure, making us self-aware parts of a giant mathematical object."
There are definitely similarities between the philosophical views expressed by some physicists and those of Pythagoras and Plato. However, while there is a clear scientific consensus that the fundamental nature of reality is well described by mathematics, the view that reality is a mathematical structure in a literal sense is not a scientific position, but a philosophical view of the relationship between mathematics and physics. It's held by a minority of physicists, typically found working with abstract areas of mathematical physics. Max Tegmark is a well-known example of a physicist who holds this position, and he argues for what's called a grand ensemble multiverse, where any universe that can be described mathematically exists in the same sense as our own. But again, this is a minority view, and even Tegmark would not argue that anything that can be expressed mathematically must be physically real in our universe, which I suspect is where you're going with this.
But what about energy? Well, energy itself is mathematical. Energy is quantifiable, measurable, and we know that energy can't be created or destroyed, only transformed. This is one of the fundamental laws of physics, the law of conservation of energy. So if we accept that our soul, our essence, is energy, then it can't just disappear at death. It must transform.
You're correct in that every joule of energy in the human body, including in the brain, including the energy involved in consciousness, is preserved on death. That doesn't mean what you think it means. Energy is just a measure of how much work a physical system can perform. It doesn't have memory, it doesn't have personality, it just does work. There's nothing mystical or spiritual or magical or esoteric about it. You are right that energy is a conserved quantity, but you are also right in that it is transformed.
But transform into what?
It's transferred to the surrounding environment as heat.
Imagine that the soul isn't anything vague or mystical, but rather a system of mathematical frequencies.
What do you mean by mathematical frequency? Do you know? Or are you just using words that sound academic?
The psychiatrist Dr. Ian Stevenson spent decades researching cases of potential reincarnation, mainly among children who claimed to remember past lives.
And as expected, he was not able to present anything other than wishful thinking and confirmation bias.
For example, there's the case of the reborn John Fletcher, 1645 to 1685, who died in Westonsisland, Somerset. Stevenson believed this to be a genuine case of reincarnation, except that church records show no evidence of any John Fletcher dying in Westonsisland at that time. This had to be pointed out to him before he changed his mind. If Stevenson had been a serious researcher, checking those records would have been a very obvious first step. This is typical of the so-called research methodology employed by paranormal researchers. They do no research that might falsify their desired conclusion.
People who study the paranormal want to believe, so they don't apply proper skepticism and don't use controls.
But here's another twist, this time delving into near-death experiences.
NDEs are dreams, or hallucinations if you prefer that term. The people who have them are not dead, they are near death. And we know this because these dreams can be reproduced under controlled conditions. For example, in centrifuges, where your brain is deprived of oxygen.
What if there was a single mathematical formula that governed all of existence, including the reincarnation process? Does that sound impossible?
I'd say it sounds impossible because there's no known physical mechanism by which reincarnation could occur. Not only is there no evidence for one, there's very good evidence against it. You know, what with there being no soul or anything like that. And we understand that memory and personality, all that stuff is a function of the brain. So I would say, yeah, it's impossible. So any equation describing all of reality would not describe reincarnation.
Physicist Michio Kaku said, "Ultimately, the laws of the universe will be reduced down to a single equation, perhaps no more than 1 inch long."
Possibly. But that equation will describe the laws of physics, not magic.
What if we actually knew that formula? What if it was a formula known as Euler's formula?
What?
Euler's formula, which is e to the ix equals cosine x plus I sine x.
Yes, that's Euler's formula, you're right, but that definitely is not the formula describing all of reality.
Is profound, and it beautifully describes a perfect circle in the complex plane.
Yes, it's profound. Yes, it's very useful. And yes, it does describe a circle in the complex plane. But I don't see anything mystical or spiritual about it.
Symbolizing cyclical processes.
Ah, so it's profound to you because you use it to symbolize something. Well, you know what? You can use anything to symbolize anything if you just put your mind to work a little. That doesn't mean that the thing you think has a profound meaning has that meaning built into it.
But what's really fascinating about this formula is that it gives birth to waves, and these waves or frequencies are the foundation of all waveforms.
You've got it completely backwards. Euler's formula does not give birth to waves. It's a consequence of the mathematics describing waves.
But not only that, it could also generate the illusion of a physical world. How? Because these frequencies, through a process known as a Fourier transform, also have the property of being able to holographically project the illusion of a physical universe.
Fourier transform is a way to break a function down into sums of sine and cosine terms, or e to the ix terms if you prefer. The point is basically like you're breaking down a recording of a piece of music into one track for each instrument. In fact, that is an application of Fourier transform. Holography uses this to go the other way. You combine waves to form an illusory end product. But this doesn't mean that all of physical reality is an illusion. In fact, the waves that would combine to fool your brain are themselves physical phenomena.
Could it be that Euler's formula is actually the mathematical representation of the structure of the soul, the reincarnation process, and all of existence?
No, if Euler's formula described all of reality, then high school students would be solving the hardest problems in all of physics as we speak. Because yeah, Euler's formula is taught in high school. The reason you didn't learn about it in high school isn't that it's not being taught in high school. It's that you didn't take those optional math courses that the nerds you laugh at took.
In fact, in our system, this equation is so important, we call it the source formula.
Your system. You mean your cult that takes people's money in exchange for feeding them bullshit that they think is profound because they don't understand it?
You see, it's not just numbers and symbols, these are actually living frequencies.
See, that's exactly what I mean. Living frequencies means nothing.
But what about the big question? If reincarnation is real, if our soul carries the data from our past lives, then why don't we remember them?
I think I've already answered that. There is no soul, and even if there were, the data you're talking about exists in the form of physical patterns in the brain, which breaks down on death. We know that memory is a function of the brain because, if nothing else, brain trauma can cause memory loss.
We aren't our brain. What we actually are is an eternal soul.
No, we really are our brains. That's why brain trauma can not only cause memory loss, but personality changes as well.
Ultimately, we're beings of eternal frequency.
Again, you're saying words that I'm sure sound profound to morons, but they really mean nothing when placed in that order.
What I just described to you in this video is just a tiny sliver, a tiny piece of our system. Are you ready for the new beginning?
Then pay me money and I will give you access to hidden knowledge, right? Something like that.
Support my work on Patreon or join on YouTube at tier 2 or higher to get access to members-only videos every week.
Call it. Yeah, I know I have a Patreon too, but I don't claim to be hiding the secret of eternal life behind that paywall. I don't get much, but it's a tip jar and I appreciate every buck left in it. Thanks for watching. See ya.